Crytoon, as the name implies, combines crying and cartoon. He is based on a little-known cartoon character from the Mickey Mouse universe. Let's take a look at the 2 issues of Batman Gargoyle of Gotham where Crytoon makes his first appearance. The team behind it includes Rafael Grampá as the writer and illustrator, Matheus Lopes as the colorist, and John Workman as the letterer. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Crytoon, a dark reflection on the Joker. In an interview with Popverse, Grampá reveals that the visual inspiration for Crytoon comes from Commedia dell'arte, especially the character Pierrot. What could have been an all-white getup with black tears was inverted like a photo negative on his wife's suggestion. This character was too named Pierrot initially, but Grampá changed his name as he wanted to make him different from the likes of the Joker or Harley Quinn. Although in more ways than one, Crytoon serves as the mirror image of the Joker. For starters, Joker wears bright clothes and has chalk-white skin, whereas Crytoon embodies darkness with an all-black getup. Crytoon offers his tears and plays up Joker's hysteric laughter. Speaking of tears, they serve as a sort of self-reflexive marker for Crytoon. In a DC interview, Grampá explains that Crytoon is aware of his wrongdoings but can't stop himself, and his tears foreshadow his victim's suffering. In terms of methods, we have Joker's clownish theatrics versus Crytoon's cartoon-like violence. Picture someone mimicking Wile E. Coyote's tricks, but causing real-world chaos. Batman, Gargoyle of Gotham Book 1. The panels begin by giving us a gritty look at Gotham. This version of Gotham has a dust-laden, old-world charm, much like the Gotham of Frank Miller's Batman Year One, and there are 2 reasons for that. You see, this is a DC Black Label publication allowing the freedom to start afresh in a new Earth, which in this case is Earth 46. With a new Batman. Back to the story. The panels interestingly take us through a gradual descent into Gotham's decadence. We start from the rooftops, move to the streets, and focus on trash, neglected street dwellers, sex shops, hotels, etc. After which, we move into these walled spaces, looking at slaves, prostitutes, men watching pay-per-view child porn on TV, armed robbery, and so on. The accompanying text boxes take us through Batman's guiding voiceover stating no child should call the grave of his murdered parents home because Gotham City and that grave are the same. Grand and ornate on the outside to delude us, to cover what lies beneath the surface, hiding the remains of disgrace, of raw violence, of the disease of ignorance. While we all rot, the monologue ends with the protectors become the predators. Violence becomes the entertainment for the everyman. The everyman becomes the criminal. A child becomes a spectator to his parents' murder, and that child became me. I swore by the graves of my parents that I would stop this endless bleeding, warring on all evils so that no one else would again bleed like my parents bled. It was then when I left Gotham, but wherever I went, Gotham was there, haunting me, never letting me forget who I should be, a hostage to my own vow of revenge. And through a visual match cut, we're introduced to hostages who are being made to mix chemicals at knife point by masked men in an underground bunker of sorts. Batman's monologue continues stating that when he returned to a dark Gotham, whatever little light he stumbled upon cast his shadow into a blurry figure. This is visually juxtaposed with a person making gory sketches on his notepad with a projector running behind him. This bit of clever dialogue and visual juxtaposition introduces us to a blurry other, a part of Batman himself. And bam! Batman strikes at those masked men from the shadows. He even bleeds one of their eyes with his fingers, while the text boxes state, "That petrified look, my brand. I turn it into the thing he'll see the last time until he recovers." One of the masked men runs to tell their boss of a monster invasion, before screaming, "Oh no, please don't!" After which the boss stares at us creepily with tears rolling down his eyes. The following page introduces Batman in a never-seen-before outfit. As confirmed by Grampá in the DC Universe, his suit totally gives off xenomorphic vibes with lines outlining his dorsal spine. Plus, the Batsuit here also operates through commands such as increase hearing to 15%. So Batman follows the stairs and first comes across dead hostages, followed by jars of ether, ammonia, nitric acid, and toluene. Realizing that the bunker was being used to manufacture TNT, Batman heads straight to the projector room and we get a look at the projected Fleischer-ish Crytoon, shedding white tears while about to hit Mickey Mouse with a hammer. This explains gory notepad sketches of a shadowy figure with a hammer that Batman finds lying around. The man interrupts him with "Don't touch my thoughts. Don't want to know how much my thoughts hurt." And the off-screen Crytoon, dressed in a black coat, graces us with his one-page-long presence. We see him holding a blood-smeared hammer while white tears roll down his eyes. He swings his hammer on Batman's face and neck and knocks him through the railing onto the floor below. Batman passes out for a while and dreams of looking at Batman's shadow from a distance while calling out "Mom," the Batman. He wakes up to his senses and boom! The site explodes. He somehow survives the blast and calls out to Alfred for help. Elsewhere, a young detective, Jim Gordon, is asked to report at a crime scene. He arrives there to find a naked man lying on his stomach with puncture wounds all over his back. Turns out that he's the fourth consecutive victim to be murdered like this. Meanwhile, a video made by a girl named Nia makes rounds on social media questioning the 4 wealthy murder victims being talked about, as opposed to a dozen homeless people found dead in the industrial zone explosion. It asks people to raise their voices and bring the otherwise invisible crimes inflicted on the poor to the limelight. Now, Nia works at an NGO, and her boss isn't happy with the fact that she uploaded this video through the organization's social media handles. So, Nia wastes no time and quits her job. At the Batcave, a bandaged Bruce explains that the chemical residue from the 3rd murder victim guided him to the secret lab. The only thing that he's able to deduce is that there must be other explosives somewhere. His monitors show the previously projected cartoon stretching Mickey Mouse's head to expose his brain. Alfred intervenes with his concern for Bruce, stating how it was so close this time, and Bruce encounters it with a revelation that his gadgets and invulnerable suits are of no use until Batman is committed to the cause. Thus, he has made arrangements to declare the death of Bruce Wayne so that he can solely commit to being Batman. Next, Batman and Detective Gordon meet to discuss about the 4 victims. They deduce that the murderer has used a really sharp piercing tool, something that they've never seen before. The victims have surprisingly not shown any resistance to the attacks. This could only happen if a sharp blow was delivered to the C1 and C2 vertebrae, destabilizing them. In other words, the killer wanted the victims to be conscious and helpless as they died. Batman observes that the pattern of the wounds corresponds to the human body's energy points, therefore pointing to a coded message of sorts. Gordon recalls that an unsolved case from 30 years ago shares similarities with this case. A German scientist, Dr. Franz Ebner, used to research the human's energy field and was accused of murdering his assistant. After serving his sentence, his body was found in a hotel room in a state similar to that of the victims. Elsewhere, Crytoon is sitting opposite to the producer of his beloved cartoon. The latter is tied to his chair. The producer, agitated that the former is just sitting idle, staring at him, asks him what he is up to, and Crytoon picks up a piece of firewood from his fireplace and makes a terrifying sketch on his wall. It's the same scary, shadowy figure from his sketches in the projector room, this time pulling apart a man's head to expose the brain. The man tells Crytoon, "Are you crying? Son, I can see you don't want to do this." The latter retorts, "My cry only foreshadows your own." So we don't see him enact the violence, all we see is a blueprint on the wall. Moving on, Alfred questions the widow of the creator Crytoon in the disguise of a collector of Bob's work. He finds out that there was once a controversial yet tragic incident at a school involving Crytoon, and Bob's entire archive and Crytoon rights were later bought and stored in the old Bobble Studios warehouse by a producer. This is where we saw Crytoon torment the producer in the previous sequence. Elsewhere, Gordon interrogates Ebner's former prison mate, Ken McRae, who's still serving time. The latter reveals that Ebner's prison nickname was Dr. Geist, since he wasn't much of a talker and always kept writing in the name of a Geist, German for spirit, but his writings drew the attention of a boy who visited him frequently. Gordon goes through the visitor's records and finds out the name Charles Quinton. You see, Quinton founded and ran the children's wing of Arkham Asylum more than a decade back. So Gordon goes and meets the director of the asylum, possibly Jeremiah Arkham, although his name isn't revealed in this story, and cajoles his way into accessing the wing's records. Meanwhile, Batman reaches the studio warehouse in what he calls here the blind machine. It almost looks like the Dark Knight trilogy Batmobile, minus the windows. He turns on his infrared vision and increases his hearing to 50%. It gets hit with an anvil on his face. A scared guard tries to stop Crytoon with his gun, but he snatches it gets into the guard's truck and forces him to drive the truck at gunpoint. An injured Batman summons the machine and follows them. Crytoon forces the driver to jump out of the truck, thinking that it'll make him stop, but Batman puts his vehicle on autopilot and jumps out to save the guy. He uses the Batclaw, saves the guy, and uses voice command to change the speed mode of the blind machine. Just when the machine almost catches up with Crytoon and the truck, Batman gets just close enough to command blind machine sideswipe, intercept, and it jumps right on the truck. A girl stops by to see if Crytoon is okay as his head was bleeding. The latter holds her hostage at gunpoint. Batman takes out a film reel of the cartoon from inside the truck and threatens to burn it. This does the trick and Crytoon lets the girl go. Funnily enough, Batman then tells him, "Tell me where the explosives are or I'll give you every reason to cry." The latter retorts, "I know you crave the satisfaction of showing me what I deserve for embarrassing you by sparing your sorry life twice." Batman reasserts his question about the explosives, and Crytoon answers philosophically, "I see a child playing, chasing his shadow, but when you chase your own shadow, it leads you into the abyss." Elsewhere, Gordon finds Quentin's list of children patients on a computer, and Bruce Wayne is one of the listees. Batman, Gargoyle of Gotham, Book 2. The panel opens with a scribe making a copy of a detailed sketch with energy points, and in the scriptorium arrives an uninvited lady with Wolverine-like nails sticking out from between her armored knuckles. She sports a cloak, a medallion, and prayer beads. Back at Arkham, Gordon is told that Quentin disappeared mysteriously 2 decades ago, and with it, the children's ward was shut down for good. Gordon gets a call from Batman, and the latter reveals that Crytoon has been taken in the GCPD officers. At the Wayne Manor, an injured Bruce takes a healing bath, and through a flashback, we get some closure to Batman's last encounter with Crytoon. The latter knew that Batman wanted to dry beat him and willingly took a brutal beating until the GCPD intervened. Batman's thoughts during the flashback read, "I will make the violence my rite of passage by changing its meaning. Each blow becomes a stab at the child inside me. Until he dies, I'll be complete. But when he's gone, I'll forget you, Mother. This will be my most wrenching sacrifice." Meanwhile, a bandaged Crytoon is interrogated at the GCPD. He says, "I'm not the killer you're looking for. You offend me by giving me credit for such unimaginative work." Gordon follows up with, "Evidence from the investigation into the recent murders has led us to you, and you're connected to the industrial zone explosion where 12 bodies were found. What do you have to do with the murders?" Crytoon retorts, "You know that need to find out what it's like to rip someone's heart out through their mouth?" Gordon asserts, "Tell me where all those explosives ended up." You see, Gordon here takes a risk, probably without giving it much thought. As it is, his colleagues at GCPD remain wary of Batman as a potential ally to the police. And Gordon, with this bit about the explosives, gives away the fact that he's been discussing the case with Batman. No other officer listening in on the interrogation has any knowledge of the explosion. This is when Crytoon comes up with a masterstroke. He may have his own reservations against Batman, but his subsequent answer also addresses the concerns of the other officers. He retorts, "Why isn't the masked torturer being interrogated in my place? I don't mask my evil, and my soul hurts." At the end of the interrogation, Crytoon leaves a blood-stained clue on the table. Gordon is confronted by his commissioner about working with Batman, while arrangements are made to transfer Crytoon to Arkham. Elsewhere, Nia and the protesters gather outside the Wayne Tower, and Nia urges them to put Gotham's elite in the hot seat and interrogate their role in the society. Next, the mysterious lady from the first sequence makes a comeback, this time in a church. She attends the mass along with others, but the priest is fazed at her sight and asks someone else to continue on his behalf. Although the story never explicitly mentions the lady's name, Grampá in various accounts has mentioned her name to be Virgin. The only possible clue here is a swarm of moths that gather around the statue of Virgin Mary in the church. This happens just after the priest abruptly leaves the pulpit. Strangely, Virgin too is fazed at the sight of a couple who are also attending the mass. She follows them to their home after the mass. The subsequent sequence reveals the scribe now lying dead and naked at the scriptorium, and this tells us about the possible fate of the couple she just followed. Later, Gordon shows up at the Wayne Manor. He reveals that the 4 murder victims were once patients of Charles Quentin, and Bruce, being one of Quentin's former child patients, is thus also in danger. All this while, Bruce was eavesdropping on their conversation from the Batcave. He confronts Alfred about his treatment at Arkham's children's wing. The latter reveals that he was instructed by Quentin to never bring this up later, lest it trigger an outburst of violence. Bruce clarifies the bit about violence, and Alfred asks him what does he remember about his parents' death. Bruce answers that they went to the movies and he insisted on walking back home through downtown, after which an armed man approached them and fired shots. His mother screamed and his parents fell bleeding at his feet. But beyond this, Bruce remembers a strange vision of a demon cub with a broken wing. Alfred reveals that Quentin must have altered his memories through his sessions. He reveals that after the death of his parents, Bruce was in shock and Alfred was taking him back home, but then he suddenly disappeared and was later found beating a homeless man with Gordon's police baton, which he must have stolen from him at some point. After this incident, Bruce was treated by Quentin. His treatment seemed effective too, until the idea of Batman came along. Bruce, all confused, asks Alfred whether the idea of Batman was Quentin's. The latter retorts that the answer lies in finding out who Bruce Wayne really is. In search of answers, Bruce and Alfred visit the hospital where that man is admitted now. The man in a wheelchair tells Bruce, "I didn't deserve this. You made me quadriplegic." And Bruce stood there feeling sorry for him. But next, the man reveals, "I was just a junkie. All I wanted was her pearl necklace, but your father reacted and I shot." Bruce clenches his fist in anger, and Alfred escorts him out of it. Meanwhile, someone pays the church confessional a visit and informs the priest that the scribe is dead, but their men have successfully removed their sacred books from the scriptorium. And this time too, moths were flying around. Elsewhere, Bruce's car passes by the protesters outside Wayne Tower. Nia asks Bruce about his stand in the protest, but he frustratedly retorts, "I'm not going to validate your speech, brat." Later, Batman and Gordon meet at the scriptorium, now turned into an off-limits crime scene. Gordon shows him a photo of the blood drawing made by Crytoon earlier and deduces that the one they are looking for isn't him. He also informs him about Charles Quentin's list of former patients and how the next potential victim might be one of the listees. Batman is quick to notice that the evidence at the scene has been tampered with, and given the revelation about the murderer of his parents, he blames the GCPD officers for being involved in these crimes. Batman finds Virgin's medallion stuck beneath the floorboard and asks Gordon to check out the address of the next listee. To Gordon's surprise, the address turns out to be the priest's residence. He walks in and asks the priest, how did his name end up on Quentin's list of former patients, as his age does not match the age of any of the previous victims. The priest excuses himself to take a painkiller for his migraine. Gordon does a quick scan of the apartment and finds the medallion symbol on a manuscript in the priest's bookshelf. The manuscript is weirdly placed behind a jar of moth cocoons. Meanwhile, Batman cross-checks the blood drawing with Alfred and finds out that it hints at a place called Hotel Townsend. The drawing seems to correspond to an old clock tower attached to the hotel. Back at the priest's residence, a moth flies and lands on Gordon's glasses. As he calls out, "Father?" Soon, he's attacked by a swarm of moths. A moth-like creature, who's no longer the priest, in a clever use of words, tells him, "Call me Moth-er, my son." This creature holds Gordon by his neck with his long finger claws and says, "Look at you. There is no youth in you. Your aura is dry." He's about to kill him by saying no reason to keep you alive. And that's when he's stabbed from behind by the Virgin. Despite her blood-smeared nails, Moth-er lives. He tells her that she's incapable of stopping the bells and flees right out the window along with the moths. Gordon points his gun at her and screams, "You freeze!" And surprisingly, she sits down on her knees. Elsewhere, while in transit to Arkham, one of the 3 GCPD officers accompanying Crytoon tells him, "I don't understand why you were so important to the Stadtgeist." They remind him of his fatal fate on getting caught and joke about the 3 of them taking his vacant spot. So all of them must be part of this organization called Stadtgeist. The people disguised as officers must have been tasked to kill Crytoon. However, he cracks his handcuffs open, kills the officers, and escapes. At the hotel's rooftop, Batman faces some thugs standing guard. While fighting, he breaks through the glass and falls inside, and finds himself surrounded by people in white cloaks with black masks over their entire face. The masks bear the same mysterious symbol, and a man wearing a royal mantle and seated on a throne greets him by saying, "A demon cub falls to earth and breaks its wings. It becomes the devil and kills the man. Welcome home, child." Marvelous conclusion. According to some reports, the 3rd issue will feature another character called Little Joker. Hopefully, that will bring more to the table regarding the Joker Crytoon comparison. Apart from this, it's highly possible that this man on the throne might be Charles Quinton. This explains his knowledge of the Demon Cub and Batman's altered memory. Hopefully the next 2 issues will help us connect all this, especially Crytoon, with the twisted and terrifying origins of Batman in this world. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!